They said I had no spark, no thread of magic in my veins. Every master at the Arcane Conclave had tested me, prodded my aura with their staffs, whispered incantations over my trembling hands. Nothing. Not a flicker. Not a whisper of the art that moved mountains and bent starlight. So when I stood before the void mirror, that ancient relic that revealed the soul's true form, I expected to see nothing. An empty frame. Proof of my worthlessness, carved in shadow and silence. Instead, every master in the chamber fell to their knees. The mirror showed me wreathed in crown fire and cosmic sigils, my eyes burning with the light of 1,000 collapsed suns. The reflection wore robes stitched from the fabric of creation itself, and beneath the image, in runes that predated the first language, blazed a single title: Eternal Archmage. The same instant, across 17 kingdoms, every sealed grimoire in every forbidden vault began to scream. The towers of the conclave shuddered, and somewhere deep beneath the world, something that had slept since the age of naming, opened its eyes. I had 3 heartbeats to understand what I'd become. Then, the ceiling exploded, and the gods of magic came howling back into the world.
My name is Kael Veyrun, and until yesterday I was the Conclave's greatest embarrassment. I'd arrived at the Ivory Towers 5 years ago with nothing but a tattered cloak and a letter from a village hedge witch claiming I had unusual resonance. The Conclave's gatekeeper, a woman named Magistra Celine, whose ice-blue eyes could freeze your thoughts mid-sentence, had laughed when she read it. But protocol demanded they test me. Protocol demanded they try. Every apprentice must pass the kindling, a simple test where you channel raw magic into a crystal sphere until it glows. Children do it. Farm boys who've never seen a spellbook do it. I stood in that marble testing chamber for 6 hours while the sphere remained cold and dark in my shaking hands. Defective, Magistra Celine had declared, but protocol demanded they try. The Conclave does not turn away those who seek knowledge. He can sweep the libraries, tend the alchemical gardens, serve. So I served. I scrubbed floors in the Hall of Echoes, where archmages practiced reality warping. I sorted components in the Celestial Laboratory, while prodigies 10 years younger transmuted lead into singing gold. I memorized every text I could steal glances at, forbidden or otherwise, because knowledge was the only magic I'd ever have. The other apprentices made sure I knew my place. Dren, a noble son with fire dancing between his fingers since age 7, once burned my only spare robe to ash because I'd accidentally stepped on his shadow. Lissa, a prodigy who could speak to wind spirits, spread rumors that my presence dampened magical fields. Master Aldrich, who taught practical evocation, refused to let me attend his lectures after I asked a question about theoretical limits of mana binding. "Stick to your mop, talentless," he'd sneered. "Leave thinking to those capable of it." But I kept reading, kept watching, kept learning. The conclave itself was a wonder. 7 towers spiraling toward the heavens, each dedicated to a different school of magic. Abjuration's white spire hummed with protective warts. Transmutation's copper tower shifted shape every dawn. The black needle of necromancy pierced the clouds, wreathed in perpetual storm. At the center stood the Grand Master's observatory, where the void mirror resided, used only during the Ascension trials, when masters tested apprentices ready to claim their staffs. I wasn't allowed in the observatory, wasn't allowed near the trials, wasn't allowed to dream. But 3 nights ago, everything changed. I was shelving ancient tomes in the restricted archives, a privilege earned by 5 years of invisible service, when I found it. A grimoire wedged behind a false panel, wrapped in chains that whispered warnings in dead languages. The cover was bound in something that looked like starlight frozen mid-fall. No title, no author. Just a symbol I'd seen once before, carved into the foundation stone of the conclave itself, the primordial seal. I should have reported it, should have called Magistra Celine, should have walked away. Instead, I touched it. The chain shattered. The book fell open to a page that shouldn't exist, text that rewrote itself as I read, adapting to my understanding, teaching me a spell that had no name in any language I knew, a spell for severing the veil between potential and truth. I didn't cast it, didn't even try.
but the words burned into my mind like brands, and when I finally stumbled back to my closet-sized room in the servants' quarters, I dreamed of towers falling, and gods waking, and a voice that called my name in thunder. The next morning, Grandmaster Orthan, the most powerful mage in 7 kingdoms, architect of the Treaty of Elements, slayer of the Void Serpent, summoned every apprentice to the observatory for an emergency ascension trial. "The conclave has stood for 900 years, he announced, his voice resonating through marble and mines alike. His beard was white as winter, his staff carved from the hardwood of the world tree. But the balance shifts. Dark portents cloud the future. We need new masters, new strength. Today we test all apprentices before the void mirror, regardless of rank or readiness." I stood at the back of the crowd, trying to be invisible, trying not to exist. But Magistra Celine's gaze found me anyway. "Even you, Veyrun, even the talentless must face the mirror. Let the realm witness what you truly are." She didn't mean it kindly. The void mirror stood in the observatory's heart, a frame of obsidian and silver taller than 3 men, whose surface had darkness that devoured light. Ancient magic radiated from it in waves that made my teeth ache. Legend said it was forged by the first Archmage before the world had names, designed to see past flesh and pretense to the soul's absolute nature. One by one, apprentices approached. Dren saw himself wreathed in phoenix flame, staff in hand, the title Master Pyromancer glowing beneath. The masters applauded. Lissa's reflection showed her commanding a storm, crowned in lightning, mistress of tempests. More applause. 20 apprentices, 20 visions of power and glory. Then my turn came. I walked forward on legs that barely held me. The masters didn't even try to hide their smirks. Grandmaster Orthan looked disappointed I was wasting everyone's time. Magistra Celine examined her nails. I stood before the mirror, stared into darkness, waited for emptiness. Instead, the void ignited. My reflection blazed into existence, but it wasn't me, or it was me but transformed beyond recognition. I stood robed in fabric woven from cosmic night, sewn with constellations that weren't in any sky I knew. Ground fire burned around my temples, neither hot nor cold but absolute. My eyes held the light of dying stars, galaxies spiraled in my palms, and around my shoulders wrapped a mantle that seemed stitched from the raw stuff of creation itself, constantly unmaking and remaking reality. But it was the title that shattered the world. Beneath the image, in runes that predated human language, that even the eldest masters had to strain to read, glowed 2 words: Eternal Archmage. Not potential, not future, present tense, absolute. The title reserved for the mythical founder of magic itself, the being who supposedly taught the first humans to shape reality with will and word, the god mage who vanished into legend 3,000 years ago, leaving behind only fragments and faith. Grandmaster Orthan's staff clattered to the floor. Magistra Celine made a sound I'd never heard a human make, something between gasp and prayer. Every master in the chamber fell to their knees, not protocol, not respect, compulsion, as if the mirror's declaration carried weight that bent reality around it. "Impossible," Dren whispered. "He can't even light a candle. He's talentless." The mirrors throughout the observatories exploded, not shattered, exploded, as if something inside them had screamed and torn itself free. Glass rained down in glittering storms. Apprentices dove for cover. Masters threw up shields that buckled under the shrapnel's force. And then the towers began to shake. Deep beneath the conclave, something resonated, a vibration that climbed through bedrock and foundation stone, that set every chandelier swaying, every ward flickering. Books flew from shelves, alchemical vials cracked and spilled, their contents mingling into reactions that hadn't been possible moments before. "The vaults," Grandmaster Orson breathed, horror cracking his composure. "The sealed vaults." An explosion rocked the necromancy tower, then transmutation, then divination, one after another. The towers housing the conclave's most dangerous forbidden knowledge erupted with light and terrible sound. Seals that had held for centuries cracked like eggshells. And from 17 different kingdoms, carried on winds that shouldn't exist, came a sound that froze my blood. Screaming, not human, not animal, the sound of grimoires, ancient, bound, silent texts that contained spells too dangerous for mortal minds, screaming in languages that predated words. "What have you done?" Magistra Celine grabbed my shoulders, her ice blue eyes wide with something I'd never seen there before. "Fear, what did you do?" I started. The floor beneath us cracked, not naturally, with geometric precision. The fracture spread in perfect circles and sacred angles, following patterns I recognized from the nameless grimoire I had found. the primordial seal reproduced in breaking stone. And through the cracks, light began to leak, not firelight or spell light, but something older, purer, the light that existed before stars learned to burn. Grandmaster Orthan raised his staff, weaving a containment ward with gestures that blurred reality. Everyone out, clear the observatory ceiling simply vanished, not destroyed, unmade, erased from existence as it had never been built. Through the sudden opening, I saw the sky transform. Stars that shouldn't be visible in daylight blazed into being. Constellations rearranged themselves into configurations that hurt to see, and descending through the impossible starlight came figures that my mind rebelled against their existence. They were fast, not in size, though they dwarfed the towers, but in presence. Reality bent around them like water around stones. Their forms shifted between states, human and cosmic, solid and conceptual, here and everywhere. Some wore crowns of frozen time, others trailed mantles of unwritten possibilities. One seemed built from pure mathematics given terrible consciousness. The gods of magic, the beings who'd woven the art into reality's fabric during the age of naming, the sleeping architects of every spell ever cast. We'd woken them, and they were angry.
The first god's voice didn't sound, it existed inside my skull, bypassing my ears entirely. Who breaks the slumber? Who dares ignite the chains we forged to bind ourselves? Every master in the observatory collapsed, blood streaming from their noses. The sheer force of divine speech was crushing them. Apprentices screamed and clawed at their ears. Only I remained standing, somehow untouched by the pressure that should have pulverized my mind. Grandmaster Orthan forced himself to his knees, staff blazing with power that seemed pitiful against what descended. "Great ones," he gasped, "we meant no offense. We seek only—" "Silence, child." Another god spoke, this one female, her form flickering between a woman wrapped in constellation light and a geometrical impossibility. "The talentless one. Approach." A dozen hands grabbed me, Magistress Celine, Master Aldrich, others whose faces I couldn't process through my shock. "Don't," Celine hissed. "Whatever you did, whatever you are, run." But my legs moved without my command. I walked through the shattered observatory toward the descending gods, leaving footprints of silver fire on broken marble. The nameless grimoire's words burned in my mind, the spell I hadn't cast suddenly active, as if my mere presence before the void mirror had triggered something I didn't understand. The first god, a being whose form suggested a man carved from compressed starlight, extended what might have been a hand. Reality rippled around the gesture. "You hold the first word, the syllable that unmade our prison." "I don't understand," I managed. My voice sounded small, mortal. "I can't even cast a simple light spell. I'm talentless." "Talentless," the god's laughter shook the towers. "You are wearing our child's face, mortal. Do you even know what you are?" The void mirror, somehow intact despite the chaos, flared again. But this time it didn't show my reflection. It showed history. I saw the first Archmage, the mythical founder of magic, standing before a council of gods. Saw him weave a spell of such complexity that reality itself wept at its beauty. Saw him speak words that shouldn't exist, binding the gods' infinite power into structured forms mortals could learn. Transmutation, evocation, necromancy, all the schools of magic, they were chains. Beautiful, elegant chains the gods had accepted to prevent their power from unmaking creation. And in exchange, the Archmage had sacrificed himself, scattered his essence across time, became a seed waiting to sprout when magic needed renewal. The vision focused on the Archmage's final moments, on him placing his hands on a simple stone, the foundation of what would become the Conclave, and whispering a promise. "When the balance fails, when the chains grow weak, I will return, not as God, not as master, as student, to learn what magic has become and reshape it anew." The mirror went dark. I staggered backward. "No, that's not... I'm nobody. I can't even light a candle." "Because you're not supposed to," Magistress Celine whispered. She was staring at me with something like wonder and terror mixed. The Eternal Archmage didn't wield magic. He was magic. The difference between moving power and being power. That's why you have no spark we could measure. You're not channeling magic from some external source. You are the source. The female god descended until she floated at eye level. Up close, her beauty was terrifying. Too perfect, too precise,
like a mathematical proof given flesh. The child speaks truth. You are our sibling's echo, reborn in mortal form, and your awakening has shattered the seals. What seals? Grandmaster Orthan forced himself upright, staff shaking. The vaults? The grimoires? All of them. A third god spoke, this one a being of pure shadow that hurt to perceive. The chains your ancestor forged required his essence to maintain. Scattered and sleeping, he held them, but now, awakened and gathered, the seals recognize their maker and dissolve. The implications crashed into me. The Conclave's forbidden vaults contain spells deemed too dangerous for mortal use, reality-breaking incantations, apocalypse-class rituals, knowledge that could crack the world's foundations, and I just freed them all. As if confirming my horror, another explosion rocked the grounds. Through the missing ceiling, I saw the Abjuration Tower's white spire split down the middle. Books and scrolls erupted from the breach like screaming birds, their pages glowing with active magic. Spells that should have been contained, controlled, locked away, were now loose and angry. Can we reseal them? I asked desperately. Whatever I did, can I undo it? No. The Shadow God's voice was absolute. The transformation is irreversible. Magic changes, as all things must. The question is whether it changes with guidance or chaos. A scream cut through the air, human this time. Through the broken walls, I saw an apprentice I vaguely recognized running from the transmutation tower. His left arm had transformed into something crystalline and geometrical, changing shape every second. Another apprentice stumbled from the divination spire, eyes solid white, babbling prophecies in 7 languages simultaneously. The freed grimoires were choosing hosts, infecting minds, rewriting reality around anyone foolish or unlucky enough to touch them. We have to help them. I started toward the chaos, but the constellation god blocked my path with a gesture that froze me mid-step. They are beyond mortal aid. The texts seek their destined bearers. Some will survive, most will not. This is the price of power unchained. Then I'll pay it, I snarled, surprising myself with the fury in my voice. I'm the one who broke the seals. I'm the one who... You understand nothing. The first god's hand shot forward, pressing against my forehead. The world exploded into vision. I saw the grimoire scattering across 17 kingdoms, saw one land in a warlord's hands, teaching him to transmute entire armies into living weapons, saw another fall to a queen who used her necromantic secrets to raise an undying legion, saw a child prince touch a text of forbidden evocation and accidentally erase his capital city from existence, leaving only a crater of glass and screams. I saw the conclave burning, towers falling, masters killing each other as corrupted grimoires whispering promises of ultimate power, saw Magistress Selene standing alone against a horde of transformed apprentices, ice and desperation in equal measure, buying time for survivors to flee, saw Grandmaster Orthan's staff shatter as he tried to contain a spell that fed on containment itself, growing stronger with every ward he wove until he devoured him whole. I saw the world's magic spiral into chaos, reality fracturing, the laws of nature becoming suggestions, kingdoms dissolving into nightmare landscapes where up meant hunger and blue tasted like grief. And through it all, I heard a voice, my voice, the Archmage's voice, our voice. This is why we cannot remain scattered. This is why we must remember. This is why we exist, to be the anchor when magic drowns the world. The vision released me. I collapsed, gasping, tears streaming down my face. How do I stop it? I choked out. Tell me how to stop it. You cannot. Not as you are. The female god knelt, bringing her impossible eyes level with mine. You are fragmented, partial. The Eternal Archmage's essence was scattered across 7 vessels, 7 pieces of his power hidden throughout the realms. The Void Mirror awakened one piece, you, but until all 7 unite, you are merely potential without authority. Where? I stood on shaking legs. Where are the others? The Shadow God gestured, and 7 points of light appeared in the air, forming a constellation. One sleeps in the heart of the Iron Mountains, guarded by the Dragon Kings who remember the ancient compact. One dwells in the sunken archives beneath the Western Sea. One walks among mortals, unaware of what they carry. The others, the god paused, the others have been claimed by those who would use the Eternal Archmage's power for dominion.
Grandmaster Orthan pulled himself upright using his cracked staff. Then we send our fastest seekers, our strongest masters. We find these fragments before your masters will die. The constellation god's pronouncement was matter of fact. The fragments recognize only their source, Only the awakened peace, only Kael Veyrun can unite them. He must walk this path alone. "He's a servant," Master Aldrich shouted from where he'd taken cover behind a pillar. "He's never cast a spell in his life. How is he supposed to—" The world answered before the gods could. From the shattered floor where the primordial seal had cracked, light erupted, pure, blinding, absolute. It coalesced into a shape I recognized from the vision. A staff. Not wood or metal, but something between solid and concept, carved from frozen possibility itself. Runes I'd never seen, but somehow understood, spiraled along its length. The staff of the first word. The implement the Eternal Archmage had used to bind the gods and structure magic itself. It flew across the chamber and slammed into my hand. The instant I touched it, knowledge exploded through me. Not full mastery, I was still fragmented, incomplete, but enough. Enough to begin. I felt spells I'd only read about suddenly comprehensible, felt the pathways of magic that had always been closed suddenly accessible. Not because I'd gained power, but because I'd stopped trying to channel what was already inside me. And I felt something else, the other fragments. 6 distant points of myself, scattered and sleeping, and increasingly in danger as the chaos spread. "I'll find them," I said, voice steady despite the terror singing through my veins. "I'll unite the pieces. I'll fix what I broke." "You will try." The shadow god's tone held something that might have been approval. "But know this, the fragments are not simply hidden. They have taken root in their vessels, become part of them. To reclaim your full power, you must convince them to surrender what they have become, or destroy them and take it by force." The weight of that settled on my shoulders like iron chains. I'd have to convince living people to give up godlike power, or kill them. Neither option felt like something a hero would do. But then again, I'd never been a hero, just a servant with a mop. Now I was something else, something terrifying, something necessary. The gods began to rise, their forms becoming translucent. The female god spoke one last time. "We return to slumber, but the seals are broken. Magic will change. Either you guide it, or it devours everything. The choice was always going to be yours, Eternal One. We merely made certain you understood the stakes." "Wait," Magistress Celine stepped forward, ice courage overriding survival instinct. "How long does he have before the chaos becomes irreversible?" The gods looked at each other, then at the sky where stars still blazed impossibly through daylight, then back at me. 7 days, perhaps 10 if you are swift. After that, they didn't need to finish. The vision had shown me enough. The gods vanished. Reality sealed itself around their absence, the sky returning to normal blue, the impossible stars fading. But the damage remained. Shattered towers, freed grimoires, transformed apprentices, and across 17 kingdoms chaos spreading like plague. I turned to face the assembled masters, these people who'd called me talentless for 5 years, who'd mocked me, dismissed me, made me invisible. Now they stared at me with fear and desperate hope in equal measure. Grandmaster Orthan limped forward. Blood stained his white beard, but his eyes were clear. "What do you need, Eternal Archmage?" The title sounded wrong on his lips. I was still just Kael, still the kid who'd scrubbed floors and shelved books, but I was also something more now, something that terrified me. "Supplies," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "Maps, information on the fragment locations, and," I looked at Magistress Celine, "someone who knows how to track rogue grimoires, someone who can teach me what I need to survive this." Celine's ice blore studied me, then she nodded sharply. "I'll go with you. Someone needs to make sure you don't get yourself killed in the first hour." "Magistra, you cannot," started. "I can and will," she cut him off with a glare that could freeze oceans. "The Conclave is falling. Our towers are compromised. Our forbidden knowledge is loose in the world. We need the Eternal Archmage functional, and right now he's still a servant who's read too many books. He needs a guide. I volunteer." Part of me wanted to refuse, to spare her the danger, but a deeper part, the part that remembered being the first Archmage, that knew what was coming, understood she was right. I couldn't do this alone. "We'll leave within the hour," I said. "Prepare whatever you—" An explosion shook the southern wall. Through the breach stumbled Dren, the fire prodigy who tormented me for years. But something was wrong. His hands blazed with flame that burned purple, a color that shouldn't exist in natural fire. His eyes held a manic gleam. "The grimoire chose me," he laughed, voice echoing with harmonics that made my teeth ache. "The Codex of Eternal Conflagration. It showed me truth, Kael. Showed me that I'm destined to burn the old world clean and forge a new one from ash, starting with this place, starting with you." He raised his hands, and purple fire erupted with force that cracked the marble floor. The Conclave's fall had begun. And I, talentless, powerless Kael Veyrun, stood between civilization and chaos, with nothing but a staff I didn't know how to use, and knowledge I barely understood. This was going to be a very long 7 days.
Dren's purple fire screamed across the chamber like a living thing. I raised the staff of the first word instinctively, and reality bent around me. The flames parted, curving away as if hitting an invisible sphere. But the effort made my bones ache.
I wasn't channeling magic. I was magic. But my mortal body wasn't built for this. Not yet. Not fractured. "Stand down, apprentice." Grandmaster Orthan thrust his staff forward, weaving a binding spell with gestures that blurred 6 different schools of magic into one elegant whole. Silver chains manifested from nowhere, wrapping around Dren's arms, legs, throat. The fire prodigy laughed. "Chains? You taught me to break chains, old man." He spoke a word I'd never heard, something the grimoire must have taught him, and the chains simply stopped existing. Not shattered, unmade, erased from cause and effect as if Orthan had never cast them. Then Dren's purple flames intensified, and this time they didn't aim for me. They struck the western wall, the section housing the Conclave's emergency portal network. Stone melted like wax. The portal matrices, delicate frameworks of crystal and spellwork that connected the Conclave to a dozen allied kingdoms, exploded in cascades of released energy. "He's cutting off escape routes," Magistra Celine breathed. "He's not just attacking, he's isolating us." She was right. Through the chaos, I could see Dren's strategy. The Codex of Eternal Conflagration had given him power, yes, but also knowledge, ancient tactical understanding. He moved like a general conducting a siege, every blast calculated to maximize disruption. More corrupted apprentices poured through the southern breach. I recognized Lissa, the wind whisperer who'd spread rumors about me. Now her eyes blazed white-silver, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of prophecy made manifest. "The Conclave falls today," she intoned in 7 overlapping languages. "I have seen it. Every timeline, every possibility. There is no path where these towers still stand at sunset." Behind her came others, each transformed by whatever grimoire they touched. A boy whose skin had become living metal, a girl who leaked shadows that whispered secrets in dead tongues, a young man whose hands dripped with liquid time, aging whatever he touched. "They're not themselves," I said, gripping the staff tighter. "The grimoires are controlling them." "Partially," Celine corrected, pulling me behind a pillar as purple fire swept past. "The texts amplify desire, give power to ambition. Dren always wanted to burn it all down and start fresh. The grimoire just gave him permission and means." She started weaving ice shields around the surviving masters and apprentices who'd taken cover throughout the chamber. Her control was flawless, each barrier perfectly calibrated to stop fire without restricting vision. 5 years watching her from the shadows had taught me she was probably the Conclave's most technically skilled mage. Grandmaster Orthan had raw power, but Celine had precision. "Can we contain them?" I asked. "Separate them from the grimoires." "In theory." She grimaced as a blast of purple fire hit her shield, the ice hissing but holding. "The texts aren't truly part of them, not yet. They're symbiotic parasites. But I'd need 12 masters, perfect conditions, and about 6 hours we don't have." An explosion from outside made the observatory shudder. Through the missing ceiling, I saw the transmutation tower tilted at an impossible angle, its copper surface rippling like liquid. Something vast and incomprehensible was climbing up its exterior. One of the freed grimoires had manifested a physical form, turning itself into a living siege engine of warped reality. "Orthan?" I shouted over the chaos. "How many grimoires were sealed?" The Grandmaster blasted back 3 corrupted apprentices with a wave of force that made the air scream. 47 major texts across all towers, plus hundreds of minor forbidden scrolls, and he ducked as liquid time splashed past his head, aging the marble floor into crumbling dust. "Kael, you need to run. Find the fragments. We'll hold here as long as—" "You'll die." The words went from me with more force than I'd intended. "Everyone here will die. I've seen it." The vision the gods had shown me flashed through my mind again. The Conclave burning, Celine standing alone against impossible odds, Orthan consumed by his own containment spell. "Then show us a better future, Eternal Archmage." Orthan's eyes met mine, and for the first time since I'd arrived at the Conclave, I saw him look at me with something other than disappointment or pity. He saw me as an equal, maybe even a superior. I looked down at the staff of the first word, felt the knowledge burning in my mind, incomplete, fragmented, but real. I knew spells the gods themselves had forgotten, understood principles of magic that predated human language. But knowing and doing were different things. My body was still mortal, still untrained, still... No, that was the old thinking. The mindset of Kael the servant, the talentless apprentice who'd scrubbed floors. I wasn't that person anymore. Hadn't been since the void mirror showed me truth. I was the Eternal Archmage's echo, and echoes could still sing. I slammed the staff against the floor, not with physical force, with intention, with the absolute certainty that reality would obey, because I was asking it to remember what it used to be. The primordial seal blazed across the chamber floor, reproducing the pattern from the foundation stone, but inverted, reversed. Where the original had bound the god's power into structured schools of magic, this version did the opposite. It freed magic from structure, made it raw again, chaotic, neutral. And in that chaos, the grimoires lost their hold. Dren screamed as purple fire sputtered and died. The Codex of Eternal Conflagration rejected him, unable to maintain its parasitic bond in magic that refused to follow rules.
It manifested as a physical book again, leather and parchment, no longer living flame, and clattered to the cracked floor. All around the observatory, corrupted apprentices collapsed as their grimoires severed connection. Lissa blinked, her eyes returning to normal brown. The metal-skinned boy reverted to flesh. The shadow-leaking girl solidified. But the cost hit me like a warhammer. Pain exploded through every nerve. Blood poured from my nose, my ears. The staff in my hands burned like frozen iron. I'd just rewritten the fundamental nature of magic across the entire observatory, and my mortal body was not built for that kind of reality warping. I fell to my knees, gasping. The primordial seal flickered and died. Magistress Celine was at my side instantly. "You fool, you brilliant suicidal fool." Her hands glowed with diagnostic magic, checking for internal damage. "You just did in 30 seconds what should have taken a circle of archmages 3 weeks to safely execute. Your neural pathways are on fire. Your mana vessels are ruptured. You should be dead." "But it worked," I coughed, tasting copper. "But they've re-established connection within minutes." Grandmaster Orthan grimaced his oblation as Murner, the Edic of orchestrated the police in the Veltorts.
He was right. Already I could see the Codex of Eternal Conflagration's pages glowing, rewriting themselves. Dren lay unconscious, but the book was crawling toward him like a patient predator, ready to sink deeper hooks. "Then we seal them properly," I said, forcing myself upright despite Celine's protests. "The original bindings are broken, but we can create new ones, temporary prisons, to hold them until you gather the fragments and become whole enough to fix this permanently," Orthan finished. He nodded slowly. "It could work, but we'd need master-level binding wards, synchronized across all 7 towers, maintained continuously. That's 47 different specialized prisons, each tailored to a specific text's nature." "I can design the wards," Celine said immediately. "I've studied every binding seal in our archives. Give me Master Valdrin from Abjuration, Mistress Cora from Enchantment, and 6 hours. Another explosion cut her off, this time from the Necromancy Tower. Through the windows, I saw its black spire crack lengthwise, dark energy pouring from the breach like infected blood. Something vast stirred inside. The Necronomicon Absolute, I realized. The single most dangerous text the Conclave had ever imprisoned. A grimoire that could command death itself. "You have 3 hours, Orthan said grimly. "Maybe less. That's the absolute waking. If it fully manifests..." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. I'd read about the Necronomicon Absolute during my 5 years of invisible study. It wasn't just a book of necromancy. It was necromancy given consciousness and malevolence. Legend said it had once killed an entire kingdom in a single night, raising every corpse within 1,000 miles to create an undead army that marched on the living. The Conclave's founders had sacrificed 12 archmages just to bind it, and I'd freed it. "Get your people to the warding work," I told Orthan. "Celine comes with me. We're going after the nearest fragment." "Which is where?" Celine asked, already pulling a satchel from her dimensional storage. Every master had a personal pocket space for tools and supplies. I closed my eyes, feeling for the constellation the gods had shown me. 6 points of light, scattered across the world. The nearest blaze to the northeast. 3 days' hard ride into the Iron Mountains. "Dragon territory," I said. "The fragment is in the heart of their domain, guarded by the Dragon Kings who remember the ancient compact." "Oh, wonderful." Celine's voice dripped sarcasm. "Dragons. Because corrupted grimoires and awakened gods weren't enough. We need 1,000-year-old beings who hoard gold and incinerate trespassers. The compact guarantees safe passage for those on sacred quests," Orthan said, but his tone held doubt. "Though it was written 3 centuries ago, and dragons are particular about remembering who they owe debts to. Do we have a choice?" I looked at him directly. "You hold here, ward what you can, but if I don't get stronger, if I don't unite the fragments, none of it matters." He met my gaze for a long moment, then extended his hand. I took it, and he pressed something into my palm, a small crystal pendant shaped like the Conclave seal. "Emergency beacon," he explained. "If you succeed, if you gather even 1 or 2 fragments, activate this. We'll open a portal to your location. Risks be damned. Get you back here so you can help with the final containment. And if I fail, then we're all dead anyway, so it won't matter." His laugh was bitter. "No pressure, Gale." I pocketed the beacon, turned to Magister Celine. "How fast can we reach the Iron Mountains?" She smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it held no ice. "I can get us there in 12 hours if I push. We'll arrive exhausted and magically depleted.
but alive and in position to start the ascended dawn. Then we leave now. We were halfway to the observatory's exit when Lissa stumbled over to us. The prophecy wielder looked small and broken, tears streaming down her normal brown eyes. Kael, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. The grimoire showed me power, showed me importance, and I know, and I did. I'd spent 5 years watching everyone around me wield magic when I remained powerless. If a grimoire had offered me strength back then, would I have resisted? It's not your fault. But the things I said while corrupted, she shook her head. I saw the conclave falling, saw you failing. Is that the future? Is that what's really going to happen? I thought about the vision the gods had shown me, thought about towers burning, and reality cracking, and Orthan consumed by his own magic. Not if I can help it, I said. Take care of the others, help with the ward building, and if I don't come back, you will. She said it with absolute certainty, her prophetic gift leaking through despite the grimoire's absence. You'll come back, Kael. You'll come back different, but you'll come back. There was something in her tone, a warning and a promise mixed, that made my spine prickle. But there was no time to ask what she meant. Celine grabbed my arm, and the world dissolved into translocation space.
The iron mountains manifested around us like reality remembering how to be solid. One moment, the spinning, nauseating non-space of translocation. The next, freezing wind, thin air, and peaks that stabbed the sky like broken teeth. I collapsed immediately, every cell in my body screaming protest. Long-distance translocation wasn't meant for untrained bodies. Celine had warned me it would hurt. She'd undersold it. Breathe, Celine commanded, her own face pale but controlled. Slow, steady. Your body thinks it was torn apart and reassembled, which it was. Convince it otherwise. I focused on breathing, on being whole, on existing in one specific location instead of scattered across 12 hours worth of space. Gradually, the screaming pain faded to mere agony. When I could finally open my eyes without vomiting, I saw we had arrived at the base of the tallest peak in the range. The mountain rose before us like a sleeping giant, its summit lost in clouds that flickered with internal lightning. Ancient script, draconic, I realized, was carved into the cliff face, in letters taller than houses. Can you read it? I asked Celine. Loosely, she squinted at the glowing runes. Something about sacred trust and blood price for trespass, and, oh, that's not encouraging, death to those who approach with greed in their hearts. Good thing we're not here for treasure. Dragons don't differentiate. To them, everything worth having is treasure. Knowledge, power, artifacts. We're here seeking a fragment of the Eternal Archmage's essence. They'll consider that the greatest treasure of all. She had a point. I looked up at the mountain, feeling the fragment's presence like a distant heartbeat. It was there, close. Maybe a day's climb through terrain that would kill most mortals before they reached halfway. The compact guarantees safe passage, I said, more to convince myself than Celine. Grandmaster Orthan said, Grandmaster Orthan has never met a Dragon King. Celine pulled her cloak tighter against the wind. I have, once. During my journeyman trials, I was assigned to negotiate a territorial dispute between the Bronze Dragon clan and a human mining settlement. Do you know how that negotiation ended? How? The dragon ate the lead miner, then asked if we had anything else to discuss. She smiled at my expression. They're not evil, Kael, but they're not human. They operate by rules we barely comprehend. The compact exists, yes, but it's built on context and precedent we might not satisfy. Then what do? We climb, we don't steal, we show respect. And when we meet the Guardian, because there will be a Guardian, we tell the absolute truth. Dragons can smell lies, literally. We started climbing as the sun dipped toward the western horizon, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of blood and gold. The path, if it could be called that, was more suggestion than trail. Narrow ledges over 1,000-foot drops, ice-slicked stone that gave way without warning, winds that tried to tear us from the mountain's face. Celine used magic sparingly, warming charms to prevent frostbite, adhesion spells to help our boots grip, but she rationed her power carefully. We'll need reserves when we reach the summit, she explained. Whatever guards the fragment won't be defeated by party tricks. I used the staff as a walking stick, feeling its power hum through frozen fingers. The knowledge in my mind was vast but frustratingly incomplete. I could remember spells for reshaping continents,
but couldn't quite recall the basic warm charm Celine chased with casual ease. Fragmented, partial, insufficient. We climbed through the night. No choice. Stopping meant freezing to death. Celine conjured small flame spheres for light and heat, but even those struggled in the thin air. My lungs burned. My legs felt like lead. But I kept moving because the alternative was failure, and failure meant watching the conclave burn in the vision the gods had shown me. Dawn found us 2/3 up the mountain, sheltering in a shallow cave while a blizzard howled past with force that would have scoured flesh from bone. Celine rationed supplies from her dimensional storage: dried meat, hard bread, water that tasted of metal and magic. "Tell me about the first Archmage," she said suddenly, her breath misting in the frigid air. "Not the myths, not the legends, the real story. You remember, don't you? At least fragments?" I closed my eyes, reaching for those scattered memories. "He was lonely," I said slowly. "That's what I remember most. The gods offered him anything: immortality, cosmic power, a throne among the stars. But he chose to be mortal, to teach mortals magic, because being eternal among beings who would never change, never grow, never surprise him, it was a prison more absolute than any cage. So he traded infinity for brevity. He traded stagnation for story." The memory solidified as I spoke. "The gods exist. They don't live. They can't create because they already encompass all possibilities. But mortals, we're limited, finite, fragile, and in that limitation, we create things even gods can't imagine." Celine smiled faintly. "Is that why you scattered yourself? To experience mortality fully?" "Yes, and to ensure magic evolved. Stayed alive instead of becoming dogma." I opened my eyes, meeting her ice-blue gaze. "The schools of magic, evocation, transmutation, all of them, they were never meant to be rigid categories. They were training wheels, structure to help mortals learn. But the conclave," I hesitated, "became too rigid," she finished, "too focused on tradition over innovation, on what magic was instead of what it could become." She laughed bitterly. "I've thought that for years. Got reprimanded more than once for suggesting we experimented with crossing schools, blending techniques. Orthodoxy is easier than evolution. That's why the seals broke, I realized. The grimoires represented the chaos side, magic pushed to extremes without structure, and the conclave represented pure structure without chaos. Neither is right. Magic needs both." "Then you'd better survive this," Celine said, "because if you die on this mountain, all we'll have left is the chaos." The blizzard passed by midday.